Scott Selby, how are we, sir?
Very good, Mr. Matthew Gordon.
I'm not surprised. I heard the good news, but first we better talk about the nickel market before we get into all of that. Give us a rundown. Most metals are being hammered at the moment. Nickel any different?
No, going along for the ride. Unfortunately, U.S. dollar strength tends to mean U.S. dollar commodity prices drop off, and with this settlement in the Strait of Hormuz, you've seen strength in the U.S. dollar, and the resultant, beat up across the board. Nickel was in that 18.5 to 20,000 range for most of 2026, but we've dropped back out of that down to below $17,000. The key thing here is, when you see these kind of moves, is if you see the full, sort of the full price sort of strip fall back, then you start to get nervous that, it's causing some issues underlying fundamentally. But the key piece here is, yes, we have seen some more prices come off a little bit. This is peak ore availability. The Philippines produces almost half of their nickel ore during Q2, and we're coming to the end of Q2 right now. So this is about as much ore is available as can be available during the course of the year. So the fact that it's only come off, a buck or two at this point is great. And NPI and stainless prices are basically holding pretty close to their highs for the year. So, the fact that hasn't flowed through yet into those prices, is again, says the market's still robust. This is all basically macro stuff. And once we get back on the other side of it, the fundamentals will be able to reassert itself going forward. So,
okay. So I've seen lots of people about their view on what's happening with their various metals, critical or otherwise, and heard lots of different theories. For you, strength of the dollar, we'll see where that kind of levels out over the next few weeks, but also fundamentals threaten to be just fine.
Yeah. So far, it has it's shown through. So, no worries. Just use the chance to buy the dips. So
use the chance to buy the dips. Okay. Let's talk about China and all of this, because obviously, it's geopolitical situation has been a lot of turmoil in the market, a lot of posturing, a lot of adversarial type commentary. How's China reacting to all of this?
Yeah, so fundamentally, the big moves that Indonesian government made is a transfer of value from Chinese processors to Indonesian controlled miners, and Indonesian governments in the form of tax revenue. So not surprising, Chinese government's not thrilled about that stuff. So there was a story from the FT about a formal letter from the Chinese government, risking $50 billion of downstream investment. I guess the key thing here, at the end of the day, the Indonesian government, because of the various tax holidays and so forth, they don't actually without the changes that have been made, they weren't really making a lot of tax revenue from the plants the way they were operating before. So their only real stick here is whether, the Chinese government and Chinese control companies won't make the further downstream investments that the Indonesian government is hoping for. But at this point, I think, Indonesian government is way ahead of where it was 6 months ago. And so, if they don't get more downstream investment, further downstream beyond just the first stage conversion, that'll be disappointing to them. But it's not, it doesn't change the economics. And at the end of the day, they've got 2/3 of nickel supply sitting there. So in terms of, getting to the lowest cost integrated production flow sheets, that those incentives remain there. And so, I think at this point it is just going to be posturing, and we'll see what happens. The nice part now, 6 months in, you're seeing more and more analysts really talk about the nickel market being in a deficit now and going forward. It was nice to see, EV deployment in batteries was reported to be up 6% year over year in the April data, and we've seen a big restocking through the supply chain. That's part of what's been driving lithium prices. And so again, expect to see nickel demand from the EV sector in high single digits going forward. So which is great.
Okay, taking that all of that into account, do you think we are going to see a smoothing of these moves in price, or do you think there is a chance that we could still kind of revert back to the behaviors of old, where inventories appear comfortable until they're not?
Yeah, no, there's they've made this transfer of wealth happen. Again, realize that when I say Indonesian miners, there's a lot of, whether it's politicians, whether it's army, whether it's local police, that are the ones that own a bunch of these mines. So, to think that they're easily going to give up 50% higher ore prices to revert back to where we were last year, I think, you'd have to be crazy to think that that would be the case. It's just in too many people's with significant vested interests, to revert back. So yeah, no, the ship has left the harbor, and we're on this path. And again, right now we're in peak ore availability. So if you were going to see any weakness, this would be the time period, and we don't seem to be seeing it in any dramatic fashion. And as we get to the fourth quarter, when ore availability tightens up again, I think that's is what's going to push us up over the $20,000 a ton mark.
Right, and obviously, we probably should talk a little bit about the kind of supply response in a market like this, where INSG or and others are forecasting deficits. It's still, I'm not sure where China goes, because like you say, it is posturing. They've only really kind of got Indonesia and maybe Philippines a little bit, but there's nowhere else in the world they can go, is there?
No, there's. I mean, you have New Caledonia, but New Caledonia needs to keep the ore that's there to keep feeding the Aramet, to keep the one nickel plant they have left going. There's talks of China getting involved in Madagascar to try and get that plant going, but again, that's now 15, 20-year plant. And so it has its best days behind it. And then you've got small amounts of saprolite ore in places like Brazil and so forth. But, you need pretty high ore prices to make it worthwhile to ship, a lot of ore from Brazil to China. So, China, Indonesia, and the Philippines are really linked together. And that's why Indonesia has this leverage in terms of, being this, the Saudi Arabia of nickel with regard to the resource base they have. So
right, I'm just wondering what sort of the knock-on effect or the ripple effects of this, potential supply shock to China could be. US has been doing more than posturing. It's been putting its money where its mouth is when it comes to critical minerals. See, we saw Energy Fuels announcement yesterday, phenomenal. And lots more beside. Resource nationalism in the context of nickel, do you think that that's a reality? Do you think, what could that look like if?
100%. I mean, that's why, the U.S. government is back at the table hard. Nickel is one of the priority metals from the Defense Industrial Base Consortium. They're going to get to nickel projects later this year. And so, from a China perspective, the Indonesian moves is going to make stainless steel more expensive, but it's not, it's just taking it back to where it was, price-wise, 3 or 4 years ago. So it's not like it's at this point, any kind of significant major price shift that's going to disrupt the economy. But, again, just underscoring, the whole, as you said, U.S. is getting going on rare earths, and as I said before earlier this year, as the year goes on, you're going to see more and more big government dollars from, particularly from the U.S., across a range of commodities that are, really going to, I think, finally convince people that this is for real and going to be a long-term shift.
Okay, so stainless steel remains strong. EV batteries still driving on. Sulfur, obviously, a bit of we saw some price rises. That must be sort of coming off a little bit as well, is it?
Yeah, with Strait of Hormuz, that's the, in terms of the Strait of Hormuz closing, that was the one big impact was on sulfur prices, because you need 12 tons of sulfur to make 1 ton of mixed hydroxide with the HPAL. And that went up from, it had already gone from 150 to 500 up to 1250, and it's now come back off about $150 a ton. But it'll take a while for that to come back down to earth as well. So
okay, well, look, let's kind of move on to company news. I'm going to start off with Canada Nickel Corporation first, because what we have been talking about is how governments are potentially becoming part of the financial stack. We talked about it in context of your projects, but also others as well. So you put out a bit of news.
Yeah,
quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, it's great actually. So there's SB1 Markets is one of the leading Scandinavian investment banks. There's a very, very well-established debt market that does a range of products, across all industries. But the great part and what we're excited about is, they do a huge amount in the natural resources space. And so, the team there, I've worked with in the past, great team, great access to capital. And so, they're excited about the opportunity, to put put together the bridge facility for these investment tax credits. Again, Canada has set, this is the one pot of money that's there. It is committed. We just haven't seen many critical mineral projects advance so investors can see how this money flows. So we've talked about it all along. If the governments are going to give you $600 million of free money, you might as well use that as equity to minimize the dilution, that you need to do. So, that we're going to work with them, through to the end of the year. Now that, the main federal permit is just around the corner, that'll be a great kickoff for that process with them. And, I hope that we're able to work with something with them that then other Canadian critical minerals projects can take advantage of, going forward. So yeah, again, it's sometimes people announce a mandate or financing stuff and it's not, this is a very serious group that's got a great track record. And so, very excited about the opportunity to work with them.
Well, again, and I kind of want to get this, I want to understand the framing of this and or make sure that people reading this or listening to this do as well too. So like the government's moving at a certain speed and but projects need to kind of get, keep moving. So with SB1, they presumably have looked at this and go, this is a time. This is not an if. It's a when, and you're going through a process. So they are happy to put this bridge in place on that basis with their diligence. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll put the bridge in. That'll come in on a construction decision as part of the overall project financing. So again, bankers are busy. They generally don't pursue things unless they think they're going to get paid some fees eventually. So yeah, no, we're going to work through to have it in place so that we're ready to make that construction decision next year. So, which is great.
Okay. Right. Other news. Sure. We've talked about it before, but we've seen a few headlines this week.
So Gillen Capital, which is linked to Trump government, had made an equity. They've now signed an exclusivity. So we'll see, where that lands and see how much of the existing equity base that the existing shareholders get to keep. It's unfortunate, that was always the risk with Cuba and the U.S. government leverage over Cuba. So, we'll see where that goes. And the other part that's unfortunate is, they had indicated, we had inventories in place until mid-June because there's no nickel getting through the blockade of Cuba right now. And so they're actually starting to wind down the refinery in an orderly fashion. So as a Canadian, I hope that in the end is able to, get back online. It would be great to see that, right now it's a North American-based refinery that can't ship to North America because of all the Helmsburg and Cuba stuff. So, in the end, if it becomes a refinery that can be a real part of the North American critical minerals network, I think that would, end up being great. So
right, we shall see. I think we'll see a few more things like that, where projects are carved out, not necessarily in a good way, but. That's where we are at the moment. Nickel 28.
Yeah, so Nickel 28 to me is one of the most underrated stories out there. 11% of an operating asset. It's Chinese owned, so there's always that risk. But and it's in P&G, there's that P&G risk. But they've been steadily producing quarter in, quarter out. That company was free carried by the Chinese partner as part of that. They're paying down the debt. Once that happens, they get access to even more free cash flow. And so, they had done some shutdowns last year, come back, very strong quarter. Operating costs less than $3 a pound or $6,000 a ton. Again, if you want some direct nickel exposure to nickel production and can live with that geopolitics risk, which after, this amount of time that's been operating is relatively small. Again, I think it's one of the best and most undervalued opportunities that are out there for sure.
Okay, good way to get exposure to nickel prices. Okay, Magna Mining.
We continue more high grade results. That's the key piece there. It's infill on what they call the R2 footwall zone at the Levack mine. So good to see those drill results. The key piece there is being able to translate that into free cash flow. So we'll see into see what their Q2 numbers look like. As we go forward, but that's one to keep an eye on. Another one, we've been keeping an eye on is First Atlantic Nickel. We talked last time about the fact they had done a bunch of drilling, but still had no resource and still no network. They did publish the network, and again, we're highlighting the fact that they, basically produce close to, relatively, pure aurorite, which is about 71% nickel. The challenge is anytime you produce a concentrate, it's that concentrate grade is only meaningful in the sense of, what your recovery was. And I had to sort of dig through the release. Again, maybe I'm misquoting stuff, but it looked like they basically got 2/3 of the contained nickel, and then they were able to get 2/3 of that into this very clean concentrate, which is less than 50% recovery. So again, early days, nice to see them publish some stuff out, but they need to have that real balance there with real numbers to let investors know. I mean, I saw the stock was up 15% this morning, but again, there's being able to produce some amount of aurorite out of your stuff that turns out that is the grade of the aurorite that's contained in the ore body is not really, moving the thing forward. So hopefully we'll get more comprehensive recovery data, going forward so that investors can really take a look at what's there. So, and again, they've come off a bit, so I don't think they're as more valuable than FPX. But if you like aurorite, FPX has done a lot of the work and continues to advance their project.
Right, and I think we're going to finish up with Next Metals who put out a new resource. So what are they saying?
Yeah, so the thing that's been the bulk of the news flow is the Celebi, which is the higher grade. They're linking 2 old mines down at depth. But they do also have a past producing lower grade open pit deposit. And so updated resource increased the copper equivalent number by 60%. The resource is just under 100 million tons of 0.2 nickel, 0.2 copper, and about a half a gram PGMs per ton. The big thing with that deposit, they announced a couple months ago, and I think we talked then, is the thing with that deposit was it just produced a very low grade concentrate, which then at that time necessitated building a smelter close to both of those mines to be able, because you're in the middle of Botswana, you're not going to ship it very far. But they've done some good network and been able to improve the concentrate grades enough to give them a shot at being able to sell it to third-party smelters. So, this is nice follow through from there. So that is it in the last 2 weeks.
That is it. I think everyone is agreeing that the market is moving into deficit, or at least tighter supply, less inventory. So let's see what the rest of the year brings us. Mark, good to see you.